hearty welcome everyone. Greetings of the day, ladies and gentlemen. I, Anisha Kumari,
and I, Siddhant Nigon,
would like to welcome our respected deans, Dr. Anubhuti Dwivedi, Dr. Maruf Ahmed Mir, the faculty members, and my fellow students on behalf of Asian Education Group to the Budget Conclave 3.0 2021. Now, I would like to invite our speakers to come upon the dais and hold the glory.
Kapil Tyagi for the healthcare sector, and Kanhaiya Sharma for the common tax bill. Kajal for the IT sector and Kriti for agriculture. Bhavya for education sector, Harshal for the energy sector. Ayushi for communication and Varun for manufacturing. Anushka for automobiles and Ujjwal for defense. Abdul for railways and Sakshi for tourism and aviation.
Union Budget 2021 is set to focus on supporting growth recovery. The economy fights to come out the pandemic struck, and the need for further strong and decisive fiscal support remains unmistakable. During this year budget, the government focused on two key segments of the economy that has been impacted by the pandemic in their own ways. On one hand, business needs to be supported by enabling the revival of consumer confidence, and on the other hand, the welfare of socio-economically vulnerable segments of society needs to be ensured.
Friends, do you know why an annual budget is created? Budgeting allows us to create a spending plan for all our outflows and inflows to keep an eye on our future expenses and all the other incomes. It has various benefits which helps both the country and people to grow simultaneously. A government budget is used to prevent business fluctuations of inflation or deflation to achieve the objective of economic stability. The government also aims to control the different phases of business fluctuations to its budgetary and monetary policy. The growth rate of a country depends on rate of saving and investment. For this purpose, budgetary policy aims to mobilize sufficient resources for investment in the public sector. Therefore, the government makes various provisions in the budget to raise overall rates of savings and investment in the economy.
The government budget aims to reduce regional disparities through its taxation and expenditure policy for encouraging setting up of production units in economically backward regions. To encourage investments, government can give tax concession, subsidies, etc. to the producers. For example, government discourages the production of harmful consumption of goods like liquor, cigarettes, etc. through heavy taxes and encourages the use of khaki products by providing subsidies.
In today's auspicious occasion or budget conclave, we are going to have discussion over the budget presented by Honorable Finance Minister Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman on different sectors. We have over 12 speakers where 5 to 6 researchers are allotted to each one of them who held them in the organization and presentation of this speech.
Railways have always been an important sector that caters a lot in Indian economy. Indian Railway is a big contributor to the GDP of the country. The revenues have increased at a CAGR of 5.48% during financial year of 2019 to 2020. The Indian Railway network is growing at a healthy rate in the next 5 years, and the Indian Railway market will be third largest, accounting 10% to the global market. Our first speaker is Abdul Hanan, who is going to represent the railway sector.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Today, I, Abdul Hanan, with the research team of Samar, Parth, Karthik, Manas, and Hema. Today, I'm going to speak on the budget allocation for the Ministry of Railways. Union Finance Minister Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman said Indian Railway is ready for the National Rail Plan for 2030. She said this while she was representing a budget 2021-22 in the Lok Sabha. The National Rail Plan for 2030 will create a future-ready railways and will bring down the logistic costs for industries, which will give a huge pushback to the Make in India initiative. The finance minister also said this, that 1,10,055 crores has been allocated to the Ministry of Railways, out of which 1,07,100 crores has been allocated for the capital expenditure. Moreover, the railway is also set to monetize the dedicated freight corridors. Eastern and Western freight corridors will also be commissioned. A question arises in my mind that, like, what's the need of having these special freight corridors? The reason for having the special freight corridors are, first, the average speed of the cargo trains will be increased from 25 km per hour to 70 km per hour. The railway share will also increase from 30% to 45%. There would be a decongestion in the railway network as well. And the most important thing is that the operational cost of logistics will also be reduced. Some other initiatives have also been taken by the Ministry of Railway, such as the Sannagar to Gumohar section, a stretch of 263 kilometers will be taken up in a triple P model. Triple P stand for public-private partnership. Under this mode, the government will ask the private companies to run 150 private trains, which will provide you with the first-in-class hospitality. It will enhance the infrastructure of railways, and most important thing, it will provide you a job as well. Finance Minister also announced that 2 new technologies will be introduced in the metro as well. Those new technologies will be Metrolite and MetroNew. These technologies will provide the same experience to the passengers, but at a very cheap cost. High density network and highly utilized network routes of railways will be provided with the train protection system, which will eliminate train collision incidents due to human error. Ms. Sitharaman also said that broad gauge route electrification was expected to reach 46,000 kilometers by the end of 2021. But I think so that electrification in the railway is both a boon and a bane. How it's a boon? First, it will reduce the fuel consumption cost by 10,000 crores. Second, eliminating diesel engine will result in the lesser demand of crude oil, which will ultimately result in a lesser import bills. Third, it will reduce the railway carbon footprint and make the Railway of India a green corridor. Electrification is a bane, but how? It's a bane because first, high basic capital cost. Second, possibility of electrical hazards. Third, electrical interference with communication system. The most important thing is that it will unnecessarily add burden to the Ministry of Energy. And there's a good news for all the people who are there in an auditorium and all those people who are joined with us live through Zoom, that the Ministry of Railway will be launching the aesthetically designed Vistadome Linke Halfman Bush coaches, which are inspired by the Western train circuits. These coaches will neither compromise in comfort nor in a window view. Indian Railway also set up Kisan Rail through Triple P model. These trains transport the perishable good at a very fast rate, or you could say quickly. The central government also introduced the India's first bullet train project between Ahmedabad and Mumbai. At last, but not the least, I would like to say, if the government of India keeps working hard in such a way for at least 10 years, then the standard of the Indian Railway will be the same as the standards of the Western railways. Thank you.
Can you please explain why electrification in railway is bad as per you?
As I've already mentioned that electrification in railway is a bane because first and the most important thing that it will unnecessarily add burden to the energy sector of the India, and the second thing is that there will be chances of having the accidents because of the electrical failures.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Abdul.
The Indian automobile sector is right now contributing around 7.1% to the total GDP, and around 3.2 crore people are employed directly in the automobile sector itself. Now we have Anushka Tyagi for the representation of the automobile sector.
Good morning, one and all present here. Today, I am Anushka Tyagi with my researchers, who is Alok, Prakhar, Akansha, Harshit, and Akansha. So we have researched about automobile industry and its impact. So moving on, the union budget for fiscal year 22 attempts to be a reforms budget 2.2. It not only talks about disinvestment, but it also talks about how government is trying to disinvest from various sectors, even from 4 crore areas which are identified for government presence. The finance minister used the word privatization of public undertakings, which alone sets this budget apart. With no new taxes, despite of COVID-19 pandemic and contracted economy, this budget attempts to create a positive sentiment on the economy and the automobile sector, which contributes to half of the industrial GDP. The automobile sector of every economy is placed at the center of economic activities. Though, if we talk about the Indian automobile sector, it faced a massive sluggishness in past 3 years due to the introduction of GST, that is goods and services tax, emission norms, insurance regulations, and a lot. So this all contributed to increase in acquisition cost, which reduced the liquidity of the consumers. So this sector has been waiting for direct announcements of some policies that could reduce the acquisition costs and improve the consumers' liquidity. So the biggest win of this budget is the announcement of scrappage policy. So what is scrappage policy? Scrappage policy is phasing out of old and unfit vehicles. As a part of this, personal vehicles will undergo the fitness test after 20 years, and all the commercial vehicles after 25 years. So why we have talked about this is because the commercial vehicles will be running on road for more time, so they have even more time. Besides contributing to lower emissions and lower carbon emissions and improving road safety, this budget also ensures that the demands for the vehicles uplift. However, the efficacy of this depends on the roadworthiness test if they are made mandatory, because right now this policy is implemented on voluntary basis. The scrappage policy would also have a spillover impact on the auto component manufacturers, especially to those who are supplying to OEMs will see a spur in their sales, while those catering to only after-sales services may see a dip as the requirement of spares will reduce. The same will be the impact on service sector and workshop. So the scrap generated will also have a positive impact on steel prices. We know that the steel prices have been substantially heated up in last 6 months. Moderation of steel prices will have a positive impact on component industries because they require a lot of steel. Scrappage of old combustion engine would open up opportunities for new electric vehicles. So you can see how positively and negatively this scrappage policy is impacting our automobile sector. So we can conclude that the scrappage policy will have an implication which will be complex and will not be as linear as it appears to be. Also, the government this year has announced a new scheme which would be launched at a cost of 18,000 crore to support augmentation of public bus services, which will enhance our economic growth by creating job opportunities and enhancing mobility of urban residents. Also, the government this year has provided an enhanced outlay of 1,18,101 lakh crore for the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, out of which 1,08,230 crore is for capital, which is the highest ever. We have talked about all the goods about the policies. Now let's talk about what we think that was missing in this budget. So the very first thing that we came to know and analyze was the absence of no rationalization of GST on automobiles. So we all know that whether it's a two-wheeler or an entry-level car, all such cars attracts a GST at the levels of luxury item. So this is one thing that could have been considered to boost the growth of automobile sector. Secondly, there is no relief provided for in-person income tax. So in Indian economy, the salaried people invest a lot in the local market. If they are not provided any relief, this might affect the growth of this sector. Thirdly, the surging fuel prices. We all know how these prices are surging each day. The government has not reduced the price, especially of the unbranded diesel and petrol, which will eventually affect the automobile sector. The fourth thing is that no direct investment of electric vehicles was made. We all were expecting that the government this year will make some major announcements relating to electronic vehicles. Though there are some state governments that have rolled out their incentive schemes for investment and buying of electronic vehicles. There's also no clarity of inverted duty structure of batteries. A lithium-ion battery attracts a tax of 12% of GST, which is similar to EVs, but also it would attract 18% of GST if it is sold separately. When sold separately. Also, the absence of any mention on FAME in this budget is a big miss of electric vehicles. The last thing that was missing and that we have researched about the increase in customs duty of components of vehicles from 10% to 15% on items like spokes, wheel rims, brakes, forks, etc. This will have a negative impact in the current situation because this will increase the production cost and reduce and increase the cost of the cars and then decrease the liquidity of the consumers. To conclude my research and what we have researched about, I would say this budget will have a positive impact on the automobile sector, but we hope that next year the government takes care of these elements because these are small, these appears to be small, but will have a major effect on the long-term existence of automobile sector in Indian economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka. You mentioned about electronic vehicles. With that, the dais has a question for you. What do you think? Will Tesla will be successful in India, in your opinion?
Okay, so if you're asking about my opinion, I feel that Tesla will be a niche player in the expensive cars market. But its long-term existence after this all excitement phase fades out will only depends upon the regulatory framework and infrastructure. Why I've come to this conclusion? Because of two reasons. Very first thing that the Tesla is planning to import complete built units, but the tax regulation of Indian economy are not aligned with it. The Indian government charges 100% import duty on complete built units. So this will increase the cost of acquisition, and then it will make the cars so much expensive for people that the rich of the richest will be able to purchase it in India, because there'll be even the basic model cost 50 lakhs. The second thing is infrastructure. To make any electric vehicle run on road, every economy needs to have a developed infrastructure. But we know that electronic vehicles are just introduced to Indians, and we still need over a decade or maybe more than that to build the infrastructure to make electric vehicles more prominent on Indian roads. That's all from my side. I hope you're satisfied with the answer.
Thank you so much. We are highly satisfied with your wonderful answer.
India is the second largest country in terms of industrial policy, and according to the Department of Telecom and contribution of mobile industry in the country's GDP is 6.5%. Now we have Ayushi Goel representing telecommunication sector.
Good morning to one and all present here. I, with my research team, Tamanna, Gagan Rana, Harsh Yadav, is going to represent telecommunication sector. So India is the world's second largest telecommunication market. The telecommunication sector is basically made up of companies that make communication possible at a global scale, whether it is through the phone or the internet, through airwaves or cables, through wires or wirelessly. The telecom industry is battling with competitive pricing and adjusted gross revenue dues, and it has been pinning its hopes on the Union Budget 2021 to offer some breather. The government has lowered revenue estimates from the telecom sector while pegging expected receipts at rupees 53,786 crore in the next financial year, according to the budget documents presented in the parliament. The Finance Ministry in the budget for 2020-21 had projected an expected receipts at rupees 1.33 lakh crore from the telecom sector, which was slashed deeply to rupees 33,737 crore in the revised estimates presented in the budget. The government on 1st February 2021 allocated rupees 14,200 crore for telecom infrastructure that entails completion of optical fiber cable-based network for defense services, rolling out broadband services in 2.2 lakh village panchayats, and improving mobile services in the north. The Finance Ministry has allocated rupees 900 crore to boost telecom connectivity across the country, which includes high-speed optical fiber cable or satellite-based broadband services. According to the budget document, the Finance Ministry has earmarked an outlay of rupees 5,200 crore to roll out the entire optical fiber cable required for setting up defense communications network, issue purchase order for all the equipment required for the entire project to commission nationwide dedicated full-fledged communication network. The budget has made provision to install 600 mobile towers in Arunachal Pradesh and 2 districts of Assam, and another 600 mobile towers for 4G services in Meghalaya. The fund allocation for telecom infrastructure is the need of the hour, especially for the Northeast. It is a lifeline for our citizens in Northeast, said Mr. N.K. Goyal, the chairman of Telecom Equipment Manufacturers Association. Moreover, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Narol-affected areas, villages uncovered in Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir, and in border areas will get mobile tower for 4G services. It is very heartening to see government allocating additional funds for telecom infrastructure in remote and unconnected areas. Improving broadband connectivity in villages through expansion of BharatNet will give a much needed push to Digital India initiative, said Sandeep Agarwal, chairman of Telecom Export Promotion Council. The sector is also facing a huge blockage of funds in the form of GST input tax credits, which remains utilized, and with 4G auctions fast approaching, with a probable rollout of 5G later this year. To conclude, I would say the government aims to connect, propel, and secure India with the help of digitalization. Therefore, the government will continue to allocate funds towards the strengthening and expansion of telecom sector in rural and remote areas, which is expected to result in significant allotment of fund for Universal Service Obligation Fund.
Thank you, Ayushi. Can you please explain why the government is allocating additional funds for expansion and strengthening of telecom sector?
So as I said, the government aims to connect, propel, and secure India with the help of digitalization. And moreover, in the last year, during the COVID pandemic, we saw that everyone was working from home. And for that, we need telecommunication. And many companies are thinking to shift to work from home completely. Like they're thinking to sell their head offices also. So that will require a good infrastructure for telecom communication. And for that, we need government to invest in telecom sector.
Thank you, Ayushi.
Education is a fundamental human right and essential for all other human beings to exercise the same. The gross enrollment ratio in higher education in India is just 26.4%. Now we have Bhavya Davra to represent the budgeting in education sector.
I quote Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman. We are all reminded time and again that the fight against COVID-19 continues in 2021. Good morning to all. I, with my researchers consisting of Bhavya Purohit, Rishabh Raj Dhawan, Ankita Badoni, and Rohini Kumari, have searched upon the education sector. Talking about the school education, Sitharaman proposed 15,000 schools to be converted into exemplar schools, and 100 new Sainik schools have been in collaboration with the private players. The 15,000 exemplar schools will create a pool of quality schools and may be helpful in rolling out the new education policy in a phased manner in the coming academic session. The new national education policy, the first in over 3 decades, is aimed at promoting coherence among educational institutes and has advised flexibility in education delivery on face-to-face and hybrid models. The private-public partnership schools will help in the expansion of the Sainik school network, but this time the financial burden will be shared by the government and the private players. Talking about the higher education, the FM has talked about setting up the Higher Education Commission in the Union Budget 2019-20. The legislation for this will be introduced this year. A central university will be set up in Leh for the higher education in Ladakh. From education standpoint, as was predicted, the budget has also stressed upon the implementation of NEP 2020, with the setting up of the new education institutes across the country in the remote corners and focusing on strengthening the quality of education. The setting up of Higher Education Commission will also add a structural reform and streamline in the higher education scenario of the country. Allocation of words towards upskilling of the youth was imperative. Coming up to the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes welfare, the setting up of 750 Eklavya residential schools in tribal areas and focus on the welfare of SC/ST students will be a massive outlay for the next 5 years. That will give a boost to the underprivileged children and enable across the quality education to them. It has also laid the quality in education. For the welfare of 4 crore scheduled caste students, the post-matric scholarship scheme have been revamped. Rupees 35,219 crores will be spent over a span of 6 years, that is 2025-26. This announcement clearly indicates a converted effect towards making education accessible, available, and affordable to all and to the remotest and farthest areas. With the introduction of such schemes, not only education development, but also social and economic development will happen. And now talking about the skilling, under the National Apprehension Program scheme, the government will share rupees 7,500 cost of basic training on the job training for the maximum limit of rupees 1,500 per apprentice will be shared by the government. With the help of this, the skilled manpower will be created in India. TITP intends to empower Indian youth by providing them with the skill development and career advancement opportunities. It will help them contribute to the economic development of India with specialized technical skills gained from training in Japanese industry. They have decided to take the initiative with other countries as well. While these are the positive steps, there are some serious concerns that cannot be ignored. The above numbers might have a good feeling, but unfortunately, India has cutting its spending on education. The Education Ministry will receive rupees 93,224.31 in 2021-22, which was 6,086.89 crore less than the previous year. Budget from Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, an essential scheme to provide quality education to school goers, has been brought down to rupees 31,050.16 crores from 38,750 crores. Contrary to NEP's proposal to boost a fund for gender inclusion, the budget for the national scheme for incentive to girls for secondary education has been slashed down to rupees 100 crores. Setting up the national digital education architecture is a positive step. However, some more stress to put up the development of digital infrastructure of the country has to be implemented in NEP 2020 and mitigating the challenges institutes are facing in remote learning. A substantial step towards lessening the digital gap that exists would have helped make the education sector more future ready. All the major announcements for the education sector in the budget 2021 will be a boost for our education system and will help strengthen our education system qualitatively. It will also be a step to make education accessible to more students. The implementation of new education policy is an initiative to bring education level at one set standard. The budget this time was not centralized around the metropolitan cities, but we could surely see the education system of the whole country under one roof. The Eklavya model collaborated into the training programs and the Central University in Leh will boost the education system. Hence, I think that the overall education budget with all the pros and cons was represented in the budget in the best possible manner and look forward for the positive effects in the education system.
Thank you so much. As you mentioned about TITP, can you please explain us exactly how TITP will help the economy to grow?
Okay, so as I mentioned in my speech, TITP has a bilateral cooperation with the Japan. The Japan will be providing us knowledge. the Japan will be providing us knowledge. It will be beneficial in a way that we will be providing the skill India for there will be skill India, and as well as Prime Minister Narendra Modi has to create the world's first skilled labor that would be provided around the world.
Thank you so much, Bhavya.
Technologies always play an increasing role in education. As technology advances, it is used to benefit students of all ages in the learning process. The sector has increased its contribution to India's GDP from 1.2% in 1998 to 7.7% in 2017. As of 2020, India's IT workforce accounts for 4.36 million employees. The United States accounts for 2/3 of India's IT service exports. Now, we have Kajal Pandey representing budgeting in information technology sectors.
Good morning, one and all present here. As we all know, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the outbreak has laid down most of the sector, but IT is between the sector which has a tremendous growth. So with this, I, along with my research team, Chandni Chauhan, Ankit Kumar, and Utsav Kumar Singh, is going to represent the data analysis on IT sector. This was the first time when our Honorable Finance Minister has presented the budget digitally. Nirmala Sitharaman used a tablet to read out the budget announcement instead of the traditional Bahi Khata. This significant change in technology adoption indicates that technology has now become the integrated part of our lives. In Union Budget, the government has set a total expenditure of rupees 9,721 crores for the conduction of next digital census 2021. While presenting the Union Budget 2021 to 2022, Finance Minister said that the government will use data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to launch MCA 213.0, which will add the facility of e-security and e-consultation. Nirmala Sitharaman also said that the next general census in our country will be the first digital census. Some key highlights of the budget allocation for the IT sector are allocation of rupees 50,000 crore for the National Research Foundation over a period of 5 years. It will help not just in significantly boosting the research ecosystem in our country, but also in facilitating more directed research towards addressing the societal problems, said education experts and the leading directors of IITs and IIMs. Second, allocation of rupees 1,500 crores for the proposed scheme to encourage digital payments. Finance Minister said that there has been a manifold to increase the digital payment in last many years. This will take the fintech sector a higher notch. It is a 360 growth for the fintech sector. Progressive, balanced, forward-looking, and big booster are some of the adjectives how executives at India's leading startups like Ola, Paytm, Snapdeal, and Cars24 have defined the Union Budget. Third, the FinTech Hub at Gift City, that is Gujarat International Financial Tech. This move to set up a FinTech Hub in Gift City is a welcome move. In fact, there is a need to create more such hubs in our country for the FinTech to expand. The decision is clear validation by Finance Minister that FinTech are an important part of our banking ecosystem. Fourth, National Language Translation Mission, NLTM, announced in Union Budget 2021 to 2022, which will use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and speech recognition technologies to build the next generation government apps and websites that will conversational like Amazon Alexa. This mission will work towards creating voice-based internet, which will be accessible in popular Indian languages and not be dominated by English or Hindi language. Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Abhiyan. This scheme is aimed at empowering the citizen in rural areas by imparting them training to operate computer for digital access devices, especially for the digital payment to actively participate in the process of nation building.
Thank you, Kajal. As you have said about the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Abhiyan, so how, according to you, it is beneficial to rural peoples?
The information technology is not beneficial for the urban, but as well as for the rural area people. For the farmers, it gives the agro technologies which tells them how to do things in a creative manner and in a new style. For the students, it will give them the exposure to the outer world. And for the employees in the rural areas, the managers will have a proper list for them, which will contain the salaries and their and their and their years, how many years they work and how and at which level they leave the organization.
Thank you, Kajal.
Healthcare industry plays an important part in the economy, and it was very well witnessed in the COVID-19 pandemic. The healthcare market in India can increase threefold to rupees 8.6 trillion by 2022. The Indian medical tourism market is growing at 18% and is expected to reach $9 billion US by 2020. Next up is Kapil Tyagi, continuing with the health sector.
I, with my research team, Madhu, Medha, and Jiten, is now going to represent healthcare sector. Even at the outset, our finance minister said that investment on health infrastructure have substantially and progressively increased. This year, the budget was focusing on strengthening three areas: preventive, curative, and well-being. Health system, a newly sponsored scheme, PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, was also launched by the government with an outlay of about 64,580 floors over the time period of 6 years in this budget 2021 to 2022. This will develop the capacity of primary, secondary, and tertiary care health systems. Finance Minister also announced the expansion of Jan Aushadhi Kendra scheme to all the districts, offering 2,000 medicines and 300 surgicals by 2024. The main intervention under the schemes would be supported for 17,000 rural and 11,000 urban health care and wellness centers. In this budget, the government is going to set up 15 health emerging operation centers and 2 mobile hospitals, and setting up of a national institution for One Health, a regional research platform for WHO Southeast Asia Region Office, and 9 biosafety labs. She was also focusing on nutrition outreach and outcome. The government is going to merge Poshan Abhiyan and nutrition program and going to launch Mission Poshan 2.0. Jal Jeevan Mission Urban was also launched in this budget, which aims at universal water supply in all 4,378 urban local bodies with an outlay of 2.86 crores. Household connection as well as liquid waste management in 500 Amrit cities, which will be implemented over 5 years with an outlay of 2,87,000 crores. For increasing problem of pollution, which affects human life, our finance minister proposed a substantial and progressive increased amount to look into that matter. So this year, the budget have substantially and progressively increased by 137%. Thank you.
All right. As you mentioned about the COVID-19 vaccine, considering the amount of population in this particular country, how does the government plan to fund the COVID-19 vaccine? and how successful it will be?
See, as I mentioned in my words also, that this budget this year have increased by 137%. So in this budget, this is the amount of 2.23 lakh crores, and the finance minister have allocated 34,000 crores for vaccination. And she also mentioned that if there will be a need, and she will be providing more funds. So this will totally help the country to fight from the COVID-19, and this will finally, we are coming towards the nation of Atmanirbhar Bharat.
All right. Thank you so much, Kapil.
India's gross domestic product, GDP, is expected to grow at 5% in the current fiscal ending March, slower than 6.8% growth recorded in 2019 and 2020. Rising retail inflation, sluggish consumption, rising level of unemployment are some of the challenges that Sitaraman has tackled in the budget. Next, we have Kanhaiya Sharma representing common taxpayer.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kanhaiya Sharma, along with my research team comprising of MD Jishan, Sunny Raj, Supriti, Akash Aman, and Yashika Gupta, will speak about the important budget highlights in the Union Budget 2021 about the common taxpayers. To start with the onset of pandemic COVID-19, the entire globe is suffering, and a different wave of measures is required to resolve the issue in the longer run. The Union Budget unveiled a series of reforms for far-reaching towards the formation of energizing Indian economy by taking short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures. The Union Budget 2021 was the first digital budget in the history of India, which imparts a system which will be taken further in the future. The Honorable Finance Minister has taken the fiscal impulse and increased it with 34.46% in the year 2021 from the erstwhile resume of 4.12 lakh crore to 5.54 lakh crores. The changes and system getting updated due to the pandemic COVID-19, our whole economy has taken a U-turn, and a different system is needed to update the same. The spending and receipt of the union government has been highlighted in the union budget. If we talk about this receipt of the union government as an example of rupees 100, then only rupees 14 is received as the direct taxes levied by the Central Board of Direct Taxes on the citizen of the country. The direct taxes include the income tax. Earlier, it used to include income tax as well as the wealth tax, but wealth tax was abolished later on. Due to COVID-19, people lost their job, people lost their livelihood, especially the people belonging from lower and middle income group have lost substantially their livelihood. People from middle class were expecting a huge relief from this budget, but no direct benefit has been passed on to them. There has been no change in the tax slab rate this year, and the old and the new regime, which was formulated in the budget 2020, will again taken further. The again extension of Vivad Se Vishwas scheme formulated in the budget 2020 are systematically compliance reduction or a benefit has been passed on to the senior citizen at the age of 75 or above who are having pension income and interest income from in the bank from where they receive the pension, as they are not supposed to file the ITR, and the bank will compute the tax liability and charge thereon. This will reduce the burden on the senior citizen, as the senior citizen does not want themselves to be involved in the technicalities of filing ITR, and therefore the ITR will increase in the country. Then a dispute resolution committee will be commenced for the people having income at the up to rupees 50 lakh and distribute income of rupees 10 lakh for quick recovery and the solving the problem of the people at the initial stage. This will help the people from a cumbersome task, and it will enhance the people with the fast moving pace. National Faceless Income Tax Tribunal will be formulated for all the second appeal cases, so that the cases which are coming again and again in front of the income tax department can be resolved easily. Relaxation to NRI. People who are having in retirement fund from overseas, the central government will announce the manner and the time of taxability of those income so that it can be constructed well and the effect of double taxation can be avoided. Pre-filing of return will now also be include capital income from share, dividends, interest on bonds, and interest from banks and post office like salary income and other scope, as it will increase the share of income or advance taxes with the central government, but it will create difficulties for the people of the country. Then the reduction of there is a proposal for reduction of compliance with the dividend income in advance tax liability. The dividend income has to be if not announced by the company or it has not been paid, will not come under the part of advance tax liability. This will help the individual to forego the interest which they pay when they underestimate their dividend income. The strategic changes in the EPF payment has been one of the most important highlight of this budget, as the interest on employees' contribution to the Employees Provident Fund as on or after 1st of February 2021 will be taxable at the time of withdrawal if it exceeds rupees 2.5 lakh in any particular year. It will enhance the people to invest their money somewhere else, and this will be regarded for the people who fall under the category of high net worth individual, as they will be supposed to pay more taxes and the less contribution towards the EPF. This will make the EPF less attractive and the channel for other investment will be wide and open. High net worth individual who receive proceed from the unit linked insurance plan will be taxable as capital gain from 1st of February 2021, as if the premium is paid above rupees 2.5 lakh in any particular year. Affordable housing again has been the dream of the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that everyone in the country should own a particular house. Therefore, there has been further extension of the affordable housing scheme by 1 year till March 2022 for extra interest payment on housing loan for the house valued at rupees 45 lakh. A relief of 1.5 lakh in the already existing rupees 2 lakh has been given. This will enhance people to purchase house and have the scheme, as people in the country don't have their particular house, so that they can purchase their house and enhance their living standard. To quote with by Mr. Narendra Modi, Atmanirbhar Bharat ka budget is a budget of opportunities which will further lead to growth in a wide range of sectors. This is a budget that will further ease of living and bring many positive changes for individual, investor, industry and infrastructure. But this budget has highly disheartened people, especially after the effect of the COVID-19. People lost their job, but there has no mention of people who are unemployed to provide them some relief or some premium or insurance to them as being given by the US government. The people of the country were expecting the reduction in this tax slab rate, but due to the less filing of the ITR, as only 3.3% of the population in the country file ITR return, so the government is forced not to announce the reduction in the tax slab rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanhaiya. As you have mentioned in your words, can you please explain what are the reduced compliance benefits in context of income tax return?
This year budget, as I have already told, does not hold any reduction in the tax slab rate, just to make it a little more friendly or to generate more awareness towards the senior citizen and the people, and increasing the number of ITR filing in the country. The government has launched a scheme in which the people who are at the age of 75 or above are not supposed to file ITR if they have only pension or interest income from the bank where they receive the pension. The bank will compute the tax liability and charge the tax liability then and there itself. So the people from the higher age are not supposed to file ITR. It will help them to have a ease of living, that they are away from the technicalities, as because at that particular age people does not found themselves to be equal in going out and doing all this cumbersome process. As the Indian taxation system is self-assessed, that we have to assess our taxation by our own self. So that will help the people, especially at the higher age, and it will let the increase in the ITR filing of the country. if we talk about the certain changes which has been implied for the compliance for related to dividend also, that will also enhance the more ITR filing, and people will have more share of dividend income, and increase in the capital gain structure with the arena of capital expenses has been increased. This will enhance the earning of the central government in advance. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Agriculture plays a vital role in the Indian economy. Over 70% of the rural household still depends on agriculture. Agriculture is an important sector as it contributes about 17% to the total GDP of a particular country, and it provides employment to 60% of the total population still till date in our country. In the same lieu, we have now Kriti Jain representing the agriculture sector.
Very good morning to respected teachers and my fellow colleagues. I, with my researchers, which include Himanshu, Kunjika, Lakshmi, Ankit, Vanshika, and Adesh, will discuss about the impact of union budget on agricultural sector. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the budget 2021-22 that aims to shore up an economy that was badly hit by the coronavirus pandemic. The budget revolved around the philosophy of growth with the human change, ensuring the income for the farmers and generating employment for the young. The union budget sent mixed signals across the tens of thousands of farmers who've been protesting on Delhi borders since 2 months. On one hand, the budget allocation for the Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare was slashed 8.5% in 2021-22. The flagship PM Kisan scheme, meant to provide income support to farmers, saw a 13% drop in its budget, which is rupees 10,000 crores lower than last year's initial allocation. On the other hand, Finance Minister Ms. Sitharaman's speech emphasized the government's track record in paying minimum support price to the farmers, as well as the decision to allow state-run APMCs to access 1 lakh crore agricultural infrastructure fund. Talking about the agricultural infrastructure development cess, the budget mentioned that it will be levied upon petrol, diesel, gold, and other imports to improve facilities of production. Another major announcement that was made was regarding the introduction of Operation Green Scheme, which adds value to tomatoes, potatoes, onions, and expanding to further 22 perishable crops. Though the green scheme adds value to some crops, and also the budget allocation to the rural infrastructure have been increased from rupees 30,000 crores to 40,000 crores, along with micro irrigation fund corpus being doubled to rupees 10,000 crore. But still, the farm advocates and the farmers do not seem to be impressed. Reason being, the schemes that were introduced for remunerative price for the farm produce, such as PM Asha and the price support scheme, have seen budget cutoffs of 20 to 25%, while PM Kisan, which gives each landowning family 6,000 of annual income support, have also reduced in this budget. While big figures have been announced in the name of infrastructure funds, these are actually not budget allocations, but simply notional funds which are meant to finance projects through loans. And thus, the real challenge that lies with the government is of implementation. Speaking about the fisheries sector, we see that Ms. Srimati Sitharaman mentioned in a speech that there will be development of modern fishing harbors and fish landing centers, including 5 priority basis harbors which are located in Visakhapatnam, Chennai, Paradip, Pejuaghat, and Kochi, which will be developed as hub of economic activities. Realizing the potential of Indian agriculture to grow in many more areas, Ms. Sitharaman realizes the potential of seaweed farming to increase the value addition of their lives of coastal communities by providing income to them and generate employment. Seeing a mixed reaction and witnessing positive and negative effects of the budget, we hereby reach to a conclusion that what have been proposed will only bear fruits if it is fairly implemented across all areas, developing the agrarian sector as a whole and not only some fractions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kriti. Can you please explain this in a better way that the budget allocated to agrarian sector will help in the overall upliftment of the farmers of our country?
Okay, so as I mentioned, that increase in the fund allocated to irrigation will increase the water supply, which will be available to the farmers, which further will increase the yield of the product and the quality of the farm produce. Further, the seaweed park that is being developed will provide employment opportunities and increase incomes to farmers. This will help in overall development of the farmers and increase their standard of living.
All right, thank you, Kriti.
Indian power sector is undergoing a significant change that has redefined the industry outlook. By 2022, energy sector is estimated to contribute 114 gigawatt, followed by 67 gigawatt from wind power and 15 gigawatt from the biomass and hydropower. The target for the renewable energy has been increased to 227 gigawatt by 2022. The next speaker we have is Harshal Saraugi, representing the energy sector.
Well, energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. I am Harshal Saraugi with my research partner Vanshika Bhatnagar to provide you with the brief of budget allocation of energy sector for the financial year 2021 to 2022. As you can see, we have a budget of 3.5 lakh crore, but still we are facing a lot of energy issues. Why? Because still many of them are facing problems due to the generation of the electricity. If I tell you about the stats, we have already 1,000 crore for rural areas and 1,500 crores for the urban areas. Why we are putting too much effort on these? Because you can see we are still facing fluctuations in electricity. We are facing a lot of light problems in urban cities, and many more villages are there where the light is not there from past 20 to 25 years. So we are focusing on the rural area more. Now, on the other hand, National Hydrogen Mission budget was also there, which has a budget of 22,000 crore for 42 urban cities over 1 million. As you can see, India is a very big country and the population is increasing day by day. The consumption is increasing day by day. So we have to manage like that way, because if the consumption is increasing and we are not coming up with a new tech, then there is nothing to left. Because one day then government impose a law that you have only 100 joules of energy for per person. Then we are stuck totally, like we have only 100 joules for per person. So we cannot do anything. If I tell you the components of this, there are 3 components, which is generation, transmission and distribution. We have a problem in the generation part. For that, we are putting efforts, like we are putting the new transmitters are there, new transformers are there, so that more electricity should be there. Then comes the transmission, how we are transmitting it, and the distribution sector. Now the distribution sector, we are working on the distribution sector. Why? Because as I mentioned that many villages are there where there is no electricity. For that, we are focusing on the distribution. But slowly the sector is recovering very fast, and coming to the generate more energy, we have the solar panels. What we are doing is now many villages are facing problems for they have the electricity in the day but don't have the electricity in the night. So government is planning to put solar powers and other things, so that what they can do is they have the energy in the day, they have the electricity in the day, and they can use the batteries from the solar panels for the night. So this is a good initiative by the government. Coming to the windmills also, new windmills are there, new power plants are setting up. So there's a lot of things are going on, and even local electricity. What we are seeing is like units are increasing, the price is increasing. So what we are thinking is like we can put different sectors. Like right now we have Yamuna BSES, and we have Delhi Power Supply, we have Tata. Now we will be segregating these, and we will have more companies which can generate more energy from the non-conventional source of energy through solar panels, through windmills and different type. Also, state government is planning to shut down idle power stations. See, we have a lot of power stations, but they are not in use. So what we are doing is to convert them into proper power station, or we can use them for agromass, for waste using power plants. So yes, the industry is recovering at a faster rate. If I compare to last budget, it was only 22,000 crore. And this time we have 3.5 lakh crore. So yes, I say that yes, we will be getting proper electricity, proper energy, and there will be no fluctuations this time. So that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Harshal. So, from your words, can you explain why do you think in near future rural electrification policy will help in improving electricity issues in rural areas?
See, as I mentioned, this time we have a budget of 1,000 crore for rural areas. As I told you, there are many villages which don't have electricity, but on the other hand, there are around 720 villages which has got the electricity power. And with this new techs like the solar powers and the windmills, which government are giving us, so we are planning to have proper electricity in rural areas also.
Thank you so much.
Today, our service sector contributes to about 54.13%, while manufacturing sector contributes 18.32%, followed by agriculture, which is at 14.39% respectively. In contrast, Indian manufacturing sector's contribution to GDP has moved from 16% to 18.32% in the last 10 years. On the same note, now we have Varun Sharma representing the budgeting in the manufacturing sector.
Thank you, Sadan, for giving me this opportunity. Good morning, everyone. Today, I, Varun Sharma, with my researchers, Divya, Yukta, Khushi, and Laiba, are going to represent the manufacturing sector. Budget 2021 provides an opportunity to harness the capabilities required to implement the transformative reforms built upon the foundation integral for the manufacturing sector to contribute 25% of the GDP by 2025. While presenting the Union Budget 2021-22, Nirmala Sitharaman wished to give manufacturing sector a fillip. She committed an infusion of rupees 1.47 lakh crores for the sector. She said that infra and financial capital strengthening is a must to achieve the dream of India becoming a 5 trillion economy. She also announced the setting up of mega textile park schemes. She told that 7 textile parks will be established over the next 3 years. Besides this, 217 infrastructure projects have already been completed, but the sector is in need of a long-term debt finance. A new development financial institution to be set up with an allotment of rupees 20,000 crores. Although the fiscal deficit has been pegged to 9.5% in the budget, there is still a necessity to cure the allying industries, particularly the MSMEs. Recent government policies and initiatives such as National Manufacturing Policy, Make in India program, Atmanirbhar initiatives, and production link incentives has positioned the manufacturing sector in the limelight and the forefront some of the major reforms introduced. The year gone by has exposed the fragilities of the supply chain of organization all over the globe. So they revisited their near beam and long-term strategies to build their future roadmap. The tax reforms have been tweaked to enable metal recycle to flourish, particularly the import. The PLI scheme has a potential of creating approx 1.40 crore of man-months of additional workers. This will definitely help not only the local people, but also the foreign companies to invest in India and expand their production. This scheme is also expected to cut down import bills, reduce dependency on China, and absorb countries' growing workforce. The industries included in PLI range from even pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, electronic devices, to active pharmaceutical ingredients and medical devices. With COVID-19 pandemic and considering the current situation, opportunity to apply practices to achieve long-term growth, which will definitely help in ease of doing business, manpower skilling, digitization of manufacturing, and the manufacturing sector still awaits the announcement in what is deemed to be a budget like never before. Despite its higher multiplier effect on employment and growth, has not been able to serve as a house of the country's growth engine. Thank you.
Thank you, Varun. According to you, which companies are investing in India right now for manufacturing?
Like if you ask me this question, right, it's a very nice question. Thank you for asking that first. And what I would like to say is that I can recall 2 of the companies. One is the Techno Paints, which are going to invest, I think, so in Telangana, and water tech is also going to set up its plan in India. But with this, I would like to add one thing, that upskilling of labor is very important. Like manufacturing can be set up, plant can be set up, but when the skilled labor will not be there, how it will be possible? So yeah, it is a big question on that. That upskilling of labor is very much important for India to become a manufacturing hub for many companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Varun.
India domestically produces only 45% to 50% of defense products it uses, and the rest are imported. India's military industrial complex has a little success, and only recently private sector was allowed to enter the defense production. Now, our next speaker is Ujjwal Pandey. We'll continue with the budget in defense sector.
Good morning, everyone. I, Ujjwal Pandey, with my research team, Suman Jyoti, Sanchi Rathore, and Udit Goyal, would like to present our view on defense sector. We all are aware that the ongoing standoff between India and China along the LAC line of actual control since May, the hike in the defense budget announced on 1st Feb 2021 is negligible. In the view of many challenges being faced by India, the budget 2021-22 was indeed challenging for our finance minister, given the expectation that a large amount of fund would came into the sector to prepare our armed forces for the new two-front challenging and Atmanirbhar Bharat in the field of defense manufacturing, with coming up to defense industrial corridor and aim of achieving $5 billion in defense equipment export by the year 2025. The amount seems to be insufficient. Though no mention was made about the allocation of defense budget in the speech, the budget related document indicates around 4.78 lakh crore is being given to defense sector. And this time the pension related expenditure has came down to rupees 1.16 lakh crore for the next year from the current revised estimate of rupees 1.25 lakh crore. The overall defense budget for the year 2021 to 22 was hiked marginally by 1.4%, but there was nearly 19% raise in capital outlay for military modernization in the even as official unbudgeted of rupees 20,776 crore rupees was spent to buy military hardware in the face of Ladakh border standoff with China. According to the budget 2021-22 document presented by our finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman in the parliament, the allocation of defense budget was increased to rupees 4.78 lakh crore compared to 4.71 lakh crore in the last budget year 2020-21. According to the document, a total of rupees 1.35 lakh crore has been set aside for capital expenditure that includes purchasing of new weapons, aircraft, warships, and other military equipment. In a tweet, our defense minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, thanked our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi and Sitharaman for increasing the defense budget to rupees 4.78 lakh crore and said that nearly 19% hike in capital expenditure in the highest ever increase in the last 15 years. Out of total allocation, defense sector planning to invest their money in the following way. First, we talk about the army. The army has been granted a capital outlay of rupees 36,481 crore as against of rupees 33,213 crore in the last budget year 2020-21. Moving towards Navy, the allocation made to the Navy for capital expenditure is rupees 33,253 crore, which was rupees 37,542 crore in the previous budget. Similarly, the Indian Air Force has been given of rupees 53,214 crore to buy new platforms, weapons, aircrafts, which is a drop of rupees 1,840 crore compared to money it spent under capital expenditure in current fiscal. India is estimated to be among the top 5 countries in terms of military expenditure. However, maintenance of the armed forces, salaries, and pension account for most of the expenditure, leaving relatively less for military modernization measures. In this context, the increase in capital expenditure could mark a change for better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ujjwal. As per your thought, how India is becoming the superpower country.
Okay, as I mentioned in my speech also, India is among the top 5 military spenders and also one of the emerging country in terms of defense expenditure. And also to support the growth of defense and enhance the defense manufacturing equipments, defense sector is planning to already set up two defense industrial corridor in the two states of the country. One is in Uttar Pradesh and the second one is Tamil Nadu. These two defense industrial corridor will lead to increased defense production in the country.
Thank you so much.
India is the fifth largest market in terms of aircraft passengers. India's 91 international carriers comprising of 5 Indian carriers and 86 foreign carriers, which ensure that India is well connected with most major countries in the globe. Revenue passenger per kilometer in domestic airline demand growth of 18.6% was recorded in 2018, and it has been recorded as it was 3 times larger than the global RPK growth, which was just 6.5%. And here comes our last but not the least. We have now Sakshi representing the tourism and aviation sector.
Good afternoon, everyone. I, Sakshi Sharma, along with my research team, which comprises of Rohit Kumar, Jyoti Dwivedi, Karan Dev, and Radhika, would like to present our views on the topic Impact of Budget 2021-2022 on tourism and aviation sector. Tourism industry is one of the most growing noticeable industry that provides jobs to around 75 million population that account for 10% of the Indian population, generating 16.91 lakh crore revenue, or in other words, we can say that it contributes to 9.2% to the Indian GDP. Pre-COVID has been one of the worst hit sectors after the outbreak of this global pandemic coronavirus. After going through this turbulent year, industry had high hopes from the union budget that has been presented by the Honorable Finance Minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman. But the union budget has slashed the budgetary allocation by 19% from 2,600 crores in the previous year to 2,026 crores this year. The industry was expecting a major push as the travel and tourism industry is one of the major severely hit sectors in this pandemic. Many presentations and recommendations have been given to the Ministry of Finance by the Industry Association, FAITH, for the revival and survival of this sector. That included tax-free export earnings, a corpus amount of 2,500 crore for global branding of Indian MICE, Indian Heritage, and Indian Adventure for global reach under the program Incredible India. Income tax exemptions on domestic traveling, GST rate should be reduced from 18% to 12%. All taxes under one window will facilitate ease of doing business. However, the budget 2021-2022 did not take into consideration many of the demands. Whereas for tourism, two important schemes, Prasad and Swadesh Darshan, have also been continued this year as well. A new scheme of iconic sites has also been introduced. Infrastructure is important for tourism, and this budget has talked of air connectivity to major small cities as well, and with this will benefit the tourism. But on the other hand, Chairman of FAITH, Mr. Nakul Anand, said while the budget laid out proposal for enhancing rail, road, metro, and other infrastructure, tourism industry was looking at immediate support and short-term measures for critical revival. But lack of direct support in this budget has disappointed the industry. While the infrastructure measures that have been announced will boost the economy in the long run, but the opportunity for immediate support has been regretfully been missed out. Talking about aviation industry that accounts for more than 5% of the Indian GDP, contributing $1.6 trillion to the economic activity and nearly supports 11 million jobs. India is now one of the third largest, fastest growing aviation market in the terms of domestic tickets sold, having 91 international carriers, in which 5 belongs to Indian carriers, whereas remaining 86 belong to foreign carriers, which will ensure that India remains well connected with most of the major countries. Pre-COVID forecast indicated that in 2036, aviation industry will provide 98 million jobs
and generate $5.7 trillion economy in the GDP. Whereas post-COVID, the situation has been reversed and has sent the industry in the state of flux. The budget for the Ministry of Civil Aviation received 3,224 crore, which is a 22% reduction as we can compare to the previous year budget. But still, major highlights of this budget for the aviation sector are tax incentives for aircraft leasing and financing, as government is committed to make IFSC in Gift City a global financial hub that will include tax exemptions for aircraft leasing and royalty paid to the foreign lessors, tax holiday for capital gain incomes over the aircraft leasing and financing companies, tax incentives for relocation of foreign funds, tax exemptions to investments by the foreign banks located in IFSC. The custom duty benefits has also been reduced from 2.5% to 0% on the aviation manufacturing parts, which will help the industry to grow as the cost of inputs has been reduced, and this will also promote Atmanirbhar Bharat. Asset monetization of next lot of airport, working on the next round for privatization of airports, as proceeding with this step will help the ministry to complete goal of new 100 airports by 2024. Development of health system facilities at airports under the Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, under which public health units will be strengthened and 32 more airports, and also it will facilitate smooth movement of the pharmaceuticals through air across India. On a concludatory note, I would like to say, as with these many of the reforms, aviation industry would be definitely doing good in the coming years and will become one of the major contributor in the Indian GDP. Whereas the tourism industry could have been brought back on track after taking into consideration the short-term measures which has been possibly ignored. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakshi. I wanted to know from my understanding that why tax intensive incentives and exemption has been given to aviation leasing and financing companies.
See, airlines in India are typically take carriers on lease from the foreign investors. So through this exemptions, they will be attracted to come to India, and they will provide us with the carriers on lease, and this will also attract the FDI, which will also boost our economy. Because there is a substantial amount of foreign exchange that has been remitted overseas by the foreign lessors for Indian carriers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we would like to give the floor to the questions, if there are any from the audience sitting over here in the auditorium. Anyone? Any questions? Oh, yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask the question from common taxpayer person. Why the tax slab has not been increased this year?
The tax slab has not been increased this year in spite of government wanting more fund, because the people in the country have lost their jobs, and the people salaries has been reduced to a substantial level in all the sectors. Therefore, the people of the country are not able to pay more taxes, though the middle class was expecting a reduction in the tax slab, which was not even implemented. As already mentioned by me, only 3.3% of the population is filing the ITR return in the country, which is too less in comparison to other countries. So the government want to make people aware that yes, we are not charging more interest from you, or more tax liability is not being put on the individual, especially on the middle income group people. So the people should file ITR. This will provide a platform for the government to reduce the tax slabs in the further future, so that the revenue can increase. At the same time, the people should get more benefit with the development and infrastructure facility coming into being, as government need more and more fund for such kind of concept to being a developed economy and the complete the dream of 5 trillion economy. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience seeking to ask questions to our speakers?
My question is for Bhavya Davra for education sector. What according to you are the loopholes in the budget for?
Okay, so as I mentioned that there was a need for digital infrastructure, We have the infrastructure for the urban areas, but not for the rural areas. So I believe that the rural area are still facing problems as they do not have a good connectivity issues. Also, the normal families are also going into poverty, and they'll be going to the government schools, and government schools do not have that infrastructure for that. And also I mentioned that they have provided that the education sector had given the less amount as compared to the previous budget.
All right, thank you. I hope that satisfies your answer. Yes, ma'am, at the last.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question to energy sector, and my question is, with the rising population, do you think that the electric energy would be sufficient for future?
Okay, see, I'll give you a statistical example for this question. Suppose from one house, if we charge our mobile phones, right? And if we switch on the charger, we charge our mobile, and if we forget to charge, if we forget to switch off the charger, then think how many were there in the entire country who used to be like this. They just charge their phone and forget to switch off their chargers. Because of that, the consumption is increasing. We have a population of 100 crores. So if one from every house is there, if doing this problem is going on, then the consumption is increasing automatically. If we see the example for that electricity part, then we have to be sure that we also should consume less power. Then only we can consume power more.
All right, thank you so much, sir.
Now, I would like to invite our Dean, Dr. Anubhuti Dwivedi and Dr. Maruf Ahmed Mir to come up on this stage and have some enlightening words for all of us and distribute certificates to the speakers.
A very good afternoon to everyone present in the auditorium as well as online. It was a pleasure witnessing such a nice discussion covering all the points and all the major sectors. I'm sure that the audience has benefited from this discussion. We might not have been able to actually read the whole budget and gone through all the sectors, but now listening to these delegates and the beautiful research that the researchers have done along with them, I'm very sure that we all are enlightened much more on the Union Budget 2021. And it will help us in understanding the business environment, being the business students and even the technology students, to understand how the technology implications are coming from the budget. So I congratulate once again all the students, all the participants, the delegates. You've done wonders and we are really proud of you.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm sure, the way these speakers were speaking, keeping everything, intact, the social distancing norms, the masks, everything. And it needs a lot of preparation. I'm sure that was reflected. You could see the preparation level, of the speakers. And let's not forget the researchers. They have helped them since the day they have started planning. So wonderfully executed. And I would say the congratulations to everybody who was in the organizing team, and especially to the faculty members, Sanjeev sir and Alok sir, who have constantly worked on it. Wonderfully done. And this is one of such platforms where you have the opportunity to express your views, especially when it comes to budget. It's always been the hot topic for months to go. It will continue to be there in the parliament discussions. So we would advise you to watch those sessions, if not for the entire day, but at least for some time, and watch such sessions, over the proper news channels also, and take benefit of it and ensure that you are well equipped with the knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We now first have Kapil Tyagi for the healthcare sector. we have Kanhaiya Sharma representing the common taxpayer. Next, we have Kajal representing the IT sector. Next up ahead, we have Kriti from the agriculture sector.
Next, we have Bhavya Davra for education sector. Harshal Saravgi for energy sector. Next, we have Ayushi for communication sector. Varun for manufacturing sector. Next, we have Anushka Tyagi for automobile sector. Next is Ujjwal for defense sector. The next is Abdul Hanan for railway sector. Next is Sakshi Sharma for tours and aviation sector.
Next, we have our anchor Anisha Kumari. We have last but not the least, Siddhartha Kohli.
Well done.
Now we would like to extend our heartful gratitude to our President, Sir Dr. Sandeep Mawar, and CEO, Sir Mr. Akshay Mawar, for always being a source of motivation. A profound thanks are due to the directors of Asian Education Group, Dr. Lalit Veal Srivastava, Mr. Saurabh Sir, and Mr. Gurdeep Singh Raina for their constant encouragement.
We would like to extend our thanks to our deans, Dr. Anubhuti Trivedi and Dr. Maruf Ahmed Mir, for their continuous guidance. We also extend our thanks to all our deans and heads, faculty members, and especially Mr. Sanjeev Sharma and Mr. Alok Bharadwaj and the IT department, who were instrumental in making this event a success. At last, but not the least, we thank all the delegates, researchers, fellow students, and the fellow staffs. Thank you.